Harry Kane, after 19 years of playing for Tottenham, decided to leave the team and went to Bayern Munich for a record-breaking fee in the club's history of 100 million euros. The transfer was controversial from the very beginning and had several opponents. Attention was clearly paid to his age because, after all, the Englishman is already in his 30s. The transfer was also made contrary to Bayern Munich's current transfer policy. Bayern was not famous for spending so much money, and when it did, it tended to spend on much younger players. However, the Bavarians decided to make an exception for Kane. After all, the quality was supposed to be here and now. At this point, everything indicates that the risk paid off. The striker is currently the most effective footballer in Europe and has been the most talked about for several seasons. He scores goals from every position, even from beyond half the field, and shines in big games. He even scored a hat-trick in 2 games in a row. Its start is amazing, and it seems that so far few people in Bavaria are complaining about the high price of the transaction. Kane's 15 goals and 5 assists in the first 10 games are the best individual start in the history of the entire league. Last season, the top scorer in the competition had only 16 goals. Although they are in second place in the league and were eliminated from the German Cup after a humiliation that Bayern had not experienced for years, it is clear that they are doing much better, and above all, they correctly diagnosed the problem after the previous season. Bayern simply needed a real striker. Someone who will be able to immediately provide the necessary quality up front. It must be said that this task was completed perfectly. He scores more than Mbappe, Haaland, or Robert Lewandowski, and there are more and more discussions about whether he will be able to break the Poles record by scoring over 41 goals in a single season. The effectiveness should not surprise anyone here. Last season, Kane scored 30 goals in the much tougher Premier League, even in weak Tottenham, which finished the season in 8th place in the table. However, we must not forget that this may be a temporary spurt, a breath of freshness after so many years. Just look at what Lewandowski did after his debut in FC Barcelona, breaking records one after another. In today's video, I'd like to discuss where Harry Kane's ceiling might be. What can Bayern really afford? And why haven't they been as strong as they are now for years? The transfer saga involving Kane lasted practically throughout the summer transfer window. Bayern was extremely interested in acquiring a player with a profile similar to Robert Lewandowski. That is a typical enforcer. This is clearly visible in the price spent on the player, but also in the determination in negotiations with Daniel Levy, who is probably the worst person to negotiate a transfer. Especially when it comes to such a big star as Harry Kane. The Englishman has changed his game a lot in recent years and has come a long way from a great goal scorer to one of the most versatile strikers in the world. The last few years at Tottenham have seen an incredible level of game creation. He played a lot and was no longer solely responsible for goals, but was a figure without whom Tottenham simply did not exist at the front. At Bayern, he returned to his role from years ago, where his main and in fact probably only task is to score goals, which, as you can see, awakened a real beast in the player. This is best reflected in his statistics, which compare contacts with the ball to goals scored. Bayern, especially in the Bundesliga, does not need additional expenditure in play with such huge offensive power. Kane fits in perfectly between such offensive players as Leroy Sane, Jamal Musiala, Thomas Muller, and Kingsley Coman. Especially with the first-mentioned player, he managed to develop incredible chemistry, and both of them score goals like a machine. During the 8 years of Robert Lewandowski's stay at the Allianz Arena, the entire Bayern team was set up to have a great enforcer at the front. So in fact, playing for such a typical striker is in their DNA. Here it is worth talking again about the Englishman's versatility. We remember perfectly well the allegations against Robert that he disappeared during big matches. Kane and his versatility are the perfect answer to this, because even if the opponent's defenders manage to exclude him completely from the game, he does not have to be responsible only for distracting the opponent's defenders, but can go much lower and start trying to create the game. We'll see how this translates into stronger opponents in the Champions League, but I feel that Harry may prove to be a real game changer for Bayern this season. And not only in this. He is still a relatively young player who I think can easily play another 4 good seasons for Bayern at the highest level. The Bavarians desperately needed a striker, and to be honest, at the moment there was probably no better option than Harry Kane, and it can also be seen on the pitch. The transfer was good for both Tottenham and Bayern, although there were quite a lot of objections on both sides. Tottenham, after a very poor season and Kane's departure, was to be dropped from the top for a season the following summer. Bayern, on the other hand, brought in a 30-year-old player for 100 million euros. Additionally, the Englishman, and they tend to show a decline in their form outside the islands. As it turned out, Spurs are doing very well in the Premier League after Kane's departure. This is not the first such situation in the history of football when the departure of a long-time leader has the opposite effect to what seemed to be logical. At Tottenham, everything has been based on Harry Kane for years. He was the center of attention, and after his departure, the entire Spurs team gained oxygen, and the players simply had to prove themselves. Of course, we cannot ignore the fact that Tottenham's new manager, Ange Postecoglou, has a significant influence on their good form. Since his reign, they have been playing really attractive football, and many non-obvious players have become real heroes. We don't know how the Englishman would fit into this team, and it's not certain that Tottenham would be even better. Additionally, it should be remembered that the club's budget received 100 million euros, and this was the last moment when Daniel Levy could demand such an amount for the over 30-year-old player. I think there is no need to look for positive effects of this transfer for Bayern Munich. Despite the slight shortness of breath, the team is doing well. But for now, let's wait for the repayment of the 100 million. I think that at least he would have to play at this level for one more season and also finish this season in this form until the end. I have the impression that it is often forgotten that Kane has been scoring a huge number of goals in the most difficult league in the world for years. And last season he scored as many as 30 goals in weak Tottenham. If it weren't for Erling Haaland, who outshone the Englishman, many people today would look at Harry in a completely different way. The Bundesliga is not a cucumber league, but you can clearly see the difference between it and the Premier League, and this form should not surprise anyone. Kane was also brought to Munich to win the Champions League again, and not to dominate Germany once again, which should simply have been a formality considering Bayern's financial advantage over the rest of the field. In fact, Bayern was already doing quite well a year ago. It was very close, and they would end the season without a trophy for the first time in forever. However, contrary to what it might seem, they played good football and were only missing a strong 9 to be completely happy. Their best scorer had only 14 goals, which is twice less than what Lewandowski got them used to year after year. They created many situations and combined them in various ways, but there was simply nothing better to come up with, because the lack of people cannot be made up for in any tactical way, especially when we're talking about a striker. Choupo-Moting played the most minutes in this position at Bayern last season. He scored only 10 goals and assisted twice. Bayern has accustomed us to complete domination throughout the season, and looking back over 10 years, it is normal that they will not always win in the same clear way. Additionally, the game on the field was overshadowed by club scandals, so one could get the impression that their season was terribly poor. It's hard to play in a club where scandal after scandal breaks out, and even harder when it involves a coach who is suddenly fired at a key moment of the season and replaced by a completely new coach. Looking at the current season, many fans who do not watch Bayern on a daily basis may say that things are not good now because they are in second place in the table. Bayern is getting better year after year. They need to get the wind back in their sails. Paradoxically, their biggest problem is finalization, but this can simply be blamed on bad luck. Looking at the expected goal statistics without counting penalty kicks, they are definitely the best in the league with a huge more than double advantage over the second team. Usually, this statistic says the most in the context of the team's current form, because if this coefficient is at a very high level, there is basically nothing to worry about and you just need to be patient. The entire Bundesliga will certainly benefit from Harry's arrival, at least for some time. Commercially, it is no longer as attractive a league as it was years ago, And today, it is more of a springboard to great football or a breeding ground for talent than a league at the level of the Premier League or even La Liga, which has been very weak in recent years. It's not typically about the player's skills, but his brand. Kane is known all over the world, and by joining the Bundesliga, he also became its ambassador. It was certainly a very unpopular move, because it is rare for the world's great stars to change their leagues to the Bundesliga. With the departure of Robert Lewandowski, the entire German politics lacked someone who could remind us about the Bundesliga at large galas, or in general through his persona. The biggest problem of this league is money, because no one apart from Bayern can afford to maintain such a high salary as demanded by the world's biggest stars. And the loss to other leagues only increases every year. Coming back to Kane himself. What can an Englishman really afford? With his systematic good play year after year, he has proven that he really does a lot. A footballer famous for his high professionalism and versatility, he had a phenomenal start to the season, and even a momentary shortness of breath shouldn't last long. He will soon return to shooting, and if he maintains this form, not only Bayern itself will be a strong favorite for the Champions League, but even the English team at the European Championships in Germany. If Harry manages to translate his form from the German league to the German pitch during the Euro, England will become a very strong favorite in this competition. And we cannot forget that they also have the brilliant Jude Bellingham in their squad. On top of all this, there is Robert Lewandowski's record, which is definitely within his reach. For now, the Englishman is keeping his feet firmly on the ground and is not putting unnecessary pressure on himself. When asked in an interview about Robert's 41 goals, he replied, "I still have a long way to go. He played great at Bayern. He is one of the best strikers in the world. As I said, there is a long way to go, but I have to do my job." Kane certainly did not come to Munich to receive further individual awards, but with a desire to receive the first cup for his individual showcase. A player like Kane could end his career without a trophy in his cabinet, and that is impossible. Today, many fans mockingly say that the Englishman is a walking curse. Right after leaving Tottenham, the team surprised everyone, and Bayern managed to lose the German Super Cup, was eliminated as a third-league team in the German Cup, and remains in second place in the Bundesliga table. Despite everything, it seems that the current season will finally break this disastrous streak in Kane's career, and the German Championship will be the first title in the footballer's senior career. One thing is certain, Bayern with Kane and Bayern without Kane are two different teams. The Bavarians have benefited greatly from the Englishman's arrival, and if not this season, then next season they will prove it to all those who did not believe in this transfer or still do not believe in it. That's it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching until the end. If you liked the video, leave a thumbs up. I encourage you to subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll hear from you in the next episode.